the Second Amendment here a few minutes ago. Should we continue on that line, or where would you like to go, Joe?
Well, we can do Miriam the Line, we can do City of God. I thought, when we finished up before we went to break here, I was reading something the other day, and I thought it was so interesting. I write, and have to give certain age for some A&W drive-in. But when McDonald's got started, they came out with their quarter pounder. A&W decided that they're going to compete with the quarter pounder. And so they came out with a third of a hamburger at a lesser price.
Joe, you're breaking up, buddy. Joe?
Oh, yeah.
You're breaking up. Yeah, you're all right now.
Okay, so the upshot is A&W came out with a third of a pounder at a lesser price than it sizzled. And the reason for it was the people thought the quarter pounder was bigger. And so the guy said, and this is why I don't argue with anybody on the internet.
I'll tell you what, I should have a contest or something someday about when was the first time you had a McDonald's hamburger? Because I had my first one, I remember, in California in 1971. I was a lonely service kid out there, and they had hamburgers for 25 cents, and I could afford a 25-cent hamburger. So that was my first McDonald's hamburger. I wonder if that wasn't with the same as with a lot of people.
It is. I actually can tell you exactly when I had mine. Mine was in 1960. In the fall of 1964, I was going crazy.
You're breaking up again, Joe. I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening here.
Well, better? I don't know why we're breaking up.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, you can spend $1 and you can get fries, a Coke, and 3 burgers. Change.
Wasn't that great?
Those days.
Wasn't that great, man?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about City of God and
right.
What was happening and what was going on. Okay.
Certainly.
First of all, City of God, Saint Augustine is famous for being a doctor of the church. And a doctor of the church means that he was one of the early writers explaining the faith and what was going on and why we believe certain things. He wrote about the Trinity. He wrote about philosophies, the Christian philosophy vis-a-vis the Greco-Roman philosophy. And in City of God, it originally started out as the defense of the Catholic Church, of Christians, not of the Catholic Church, but of Christians, because when Rome fell, all of the pagans were complaining the reason that Rome fell was because that Christianity, Constantine had brought in Christianity, ergo the Republic fell. Well, he went through and took the historical approach, and in modern terms, he debunked that argument, and he did it decisively.
I would like to pick up on that thread with you just for a moment, because I really believe, now you talked about slavery a little earlier in the evil of slavery, and I'm certainly not here to defend slavery. It is an evil institution, was an evil institution. But I do believe that the pagans who blame Constantine for the fall of Rome were correct, and I will tell you why. The Romans were mighty conquerors because they struck fear into the populations that they conquered, and then they brought their system of laws and their innovations to these sometimes primitive tribes and improved their lives. But the real point is that they would do terrible things to the kings and rulers. I mean, they'd burn them alive. They'd have them suffer for many, many years. They let the people know that they were more powerful. And that's the way I see history, frankly, Joe, is that the most powerful and violent group will hold power, and that history itself is a struggle for power and wealth. And it continues to this day, because I firmly believe the Democratic Party in its current form is obsessed with power and money. And I have read Western history, Eastern European history, Asian history, everywhere. And it's the same thing over and over again. And frankly, the Catholic Church played a key part in my thinking. The Catholic Church was going to conquer the primitive people to save them from themselves. That's what they did.
Mike, and you accused me of a segue into a gun run?
No, it's just what every now and then we must hit each other's hot buttons because that hit mine. I mean, look at the conquest of South America itself by the conquistadors. We are going to save these savages, and they did terrible things. Terrible things.
Of course, but we look at that. You don't even have to go to South America. Talk about American manifest destiny, and and that was a concept that we embraced as a political culture of the United States. That we have a manifest destiny to save all the people of the earth, particularly Native Americans, from themselves.
Of course.
Well, of course, but back to City of God, okay? Let me throw in a little. When I was with the Jesuits, we had to read Caesar's commentaries in their original and translate them, and Cicero's Catilinarian orations against Catiline. You have got to understand that by the time Rome fell, they were being sacked not only by the Visigoths but by the Gauls. It had everything that you're talking about, the building of roads and the imposition of laws and courts and things like that, has all they started decaying with Nero, basically. Claudius and Nero. Okay, that's when everything in common parlance started to go to the toilet. And then, so we have this cancer eating away at the empire, and they just simply weren't able to sustain it. And, history obviously has a tendency to repeat itself. We saw a little bit of that with the British Empire, that has not been able to sustain itself. We see a little bit of that with the American Empire, that it's not able to sustain itself. But I don't think that you and I, if we were seeing the demise or the sunset of Pax Americana, would blame it on Christians, would we?
I would think that the Christian emphasis on peace, and this may sound odd to you, and it's going to be even offensive to some, but the Christian emphasis on peace and justice, and that we are all equal in the eyes of God, gets in the way. And I'm going to throw this out to you, Joe, as a thought experiment here, not because I necessarily believe it. But Constantine de-emphasized conquest and rule by force, and Rome fell apart. Now, if we de-emphasize rule by force, as we've just seen we did in Afghanistan, where Joe the Rabbit ran for the hills, where our country is in danger. So here, and I'm gonna put it to.
Is there a question in there?
I am going to put it to you succinctly here. If we really, really believe in our Christian faith, then we have to know that Christian faith may mean our own demise. And no, that's not a non sequitur. What it means is that if we really take up the cause of Jesus Christ, we may be doomed.
You know what? No, your concept of being doomed and mine may be two different things. You may talk about being doomed in the temporal, but I'm talking about eternity.
Ah, okay.
I don't think there's a doubt about that. But let's not get into the religious aspect. Let's take it heads on from just the historical fact. If what you're saying is true, that things get better when, if you will, if there's a Darwinian contest going on. That's kind of what you're saying.
Exactly.
Just do away with, forget about all this peace and goodness and everything. It hasn't been working out so well, because this last century has been the most violent century in recorded history. on our planet. And what we have learned is, in my judgment, is that a lack of care for each other is a recipe for disaster. And every time we have had people, and in my memory, and my guessing is in your memory, you and I have only seen 2, perhaps 3 people who have been totally and completely committed to nonviolence. One was Gandhi, the other was Martin Luther King, the third is probably Mother Teresa.
I'm sure.
And when we digressed we went from the city of God to the Sermon on the Mount. When you read the Sermon on the Mount and you see Jesus giving the law, the new Moses, he is saying, I am God, I am telling you this. He is absolutely talking about nonviolence.
Yes.
He's absolutely talking about that. And what you're saying is, you're going to die and you're going to come before me and you're going to have 70 years on this earth, 80 if you're strong, and you're going to come before me for eternity. And you are going to have disregarded what I have been telling you, and you will do so at your own peril. It will be your choice, not my choice. And I think that is a heavy message that we need to be aware of.
I would point out that if Gandhi and Martin Luther King were operating in totalitarian countries, they'd just be thrown in jail and we'd have never heard from them again. The only way that those people could have made an impact is if the people in the countries that were oppressing had a moral conscience of some kind. Martin Luther King made a very direct and personal Christian appeal to the so-called Christians in the United States that were allowing the oppression of Black people in the United States of America. Even Great Britain, who had it. Yes.
You got a better example than that. Take your example that you said. If you live in a totalitarian state and they kill you and they bury you and you would disappear from the face of the earth, you don't have to go any farther than Christ.
Right.
He was in a totalitarian state. He was the epitome of nonviolence.
Correct.
And if your claim is true, there would be no Christianity. He would have disappeared. What I'm saying is that concept promulgated on the Sermon on the Mount has so much force and so much power and so much strength, not only of idea, but of word, that it cannot be stopped. It cannot be stopped. And the powers of darkness try as they will, you cannot overcome care for your fellow man if you would love for your fellow man. That's where I would leave it.
Okay. Well, we're going to leave it there because you really are in another world here today. I could only. It is suggested by Democrats and liberals and Christian people everywhere that it is their job to remove the savagery of man. It is to curb the savagery in men, and they haven't done a very good job all those years. Did
I hear you say Democrat in there?
Yes. Yeah. Republicans.
Let's end on a quick story. I want to tell you a quick story.
All right.
Teddy Roosevelt gave a speech one day, and he was talking with his group. In the back of the crowd, the guy goes, "I'm a Democrat. I'm a Democrat. My father was a Democrat. My grandfather was a Democrat." He kept telling this over and over. Finally, Roosevelt was out and he said, "Hey, if your father was a jackass and your grandfather was a jackass, what would that make you?" I go, "A Republican."
No, not really what I was going for there, Joe. But I really the thing I like about Catholicism is that the priests don't just kind of seem to leave you alone. If you start screwing up, sometimes the Protestant ministers will get involved in your lives, and who needs that really? So I would say the Catholic priests are libertarians. Anyway.
Mike, I love visiting with you. I do, you know, but I told you this repeatedly, and I'm not throwing bouquets your way. Programs like this, which engender discussion and examination of issues, are a must in a democracy.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are, and I wish this program had been more successful over the years. I never got the amount of community input that I had hoped, but maybe we did some good. Who knows? Who knows? All right, Joe Coleman's been our guest. Thank you so much, Joe. We'll talk to you next Monday.
God bless.
Okay, God bless. This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice for that.
Take control of Electric, the Rolltech electric tarp conversion by AgRecover Inc.